A UK court has ruled that Wikileaks founder Julian Assange will be extradited to the US. This comes as the latest update in the long legal battle for Assange. Julian Assange's wife had this to say in response.
Boris Johnson and Priti Patel can stop this at any time. They can stop it today. They can stop this nightmare today and return Julian to his family. They can do the right thing and enforce Article 4 of the US-UK extradition treaty, which prohibits extraditions for political offenses. Right now, they're in breach of their own treaty. This is a political case, and with the signature of the magistrate, this now passes squarely into the political domain. Free Julian Assange.
So, Julian's defense has been fighting this, arguing that there's a high suicide risk, arguing that it will, violate the prohibition against torture and set an alarming precedent for publishers and journalists around the world. That's from Amnesty International. Does this come as a surprise to you? How are you feeling about this?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think he's going to be appealing it. I know he has the right to appeal. I'm a little bit torn on whether or not he should. Some of me just thinks he should just get this over with, come to the U.S., face trial, allow many of us, or at least try to pressure the Biden, and definitely try to do it under the Biden administration, I would think, to pressure the Biden administration to drop the charges or to pardon him or something once this process gets going. But as he's being held in this Belmarsh, where is he? He's in Belmarsh prison in London. He joined this hearing virtually. I think that as this drags on, he just continues to sit there. And I from what I understand, the conditions there are not great. So part of me, but look, you're the lawyer, so maybe you could, shed some light on this a little bit more. But, shouldn't at some point, do you just think, okay, I'm not going to appeal anymore? Because it's not like, it'd be one thing if he was on house arrest. It'd be one thing if he was out and about, and then he would just continue to appeal this extradition. But he's in a bad situation as it is. I almost just feel like, gamble it. Because what's the worst that's going to happen to you? You're still stuck in this place and prolonging potentially the incarceration. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I think the sentence that he's facing is extreme. I don't think it's one of these situations where, if he were sentenced, he would get time served. And I assume the belief is that he would get a better, fair hearing in the UK judicial system. We all know what the limits of our own are, and I would hazard a guess that our conditions in jail, our jail conditions, are not any better than what he's experiencing right now either. There is also the question of what the political valence of this is going to be in the United States. There's been very little, I think, in the grand scheme of things in terms of agitation on his behalf. The media here has been either silent or antagonistic. Even many people on the left, progressives. I remember getting questions about Julian Assange in the context of the Bernie Sanders campaign, and even Bernie wasn't an especially outspoken supporter of Julian Assange at the time. Most of his advocates at this time are people who have themselves been kind of cordoned off to fringe elements of our own media sphere. People like Glenn Greenwald, who have been, assiduously ringing the bell on Julian Assange and these kinds of issues and issues regarding press freedom. But it just has not been framed for the press in that way, as a freedom issue for the public in this way. Here, it has been largely about this same issue of, the 2016 election, who's responsible, who's leaking documents in a way that is inopportune for the Democratic Party. And for those kinds of reasons, it's been politicized in a way where the cohort that is more likely to come to his defense, the broad left, a lot of it sees him as an enemy.
Right. Well, and so there is something to that. I actually see a growing base of support coming from the right, actually, in support of Julian Assange. So there's maybe some movement going on there because he is being villainized by the left as this, the one that fed, that ruined Hillary Clinton and whatnot. So I can understand that hesitation. I don't think, though, that he would get a trial at all in Britain. From what I understand, they don't have charges against him. I think it's just the United States. So if he's held, that the only question is whether or not they're willing to extradite him. I don't think it's obviously they are. I don't think it's a question. I think they were never going to protect him. They've got too much relationship with the United States to defy the U.S. legal system like that. So it is just, to me, kicking the can down the road. And the only thing that he's maybe kicking the can down for is hope that somebody that Biden or maybe the next administration would actually drop the charges against him, that there would maybe be public pressure. But I actually think if he were here in the United States, because I get it, there's very little press surrounding Julian Assange. They've largely stayed silent. But perhaps if he was here and the trial was happening, there would be more press. There would be more of a light shed on it. And the press maybe would say, well, this is a bit dangerous. Maybe finally the Washington Post and the New York Times would come forward saying, didn't really do a whole lot different than the stuff we've done in the past and the stuff that we plan to do in the future. So maybe, but
maybe. Yeah. And look, when I say he'll get a fairer hearing in the UK, I mean, like, he'll get a fairer hearing in terms of publicity in the press. Because I got to say, I went to a Julian Assange protest maybe around this time last January or so, just up in front of the Embassy Row at the embassy here. And, I'd love to say there were thousands of people and it was very well attended, but that's just not the way it is. Right. It's a really ragtag group. And maybe you're right that if we have a better focal point for these kind of protests, as opposed to just, the random British embassy on a quiet street in Washington, D.C., it would attract more attention. But in all likelihood, they will anticipate this and put him somewhere. Most of our prisons are kind of off in the nether regions for other kinds of political reasons, right, to kind of disenfranchise and keep out of mind our 2 million strong prison population. And I'm hopeful that if this is the eventuality, this is what happens and he's extradited here, that it will have some positive upside. But I have to believe his legal team has been fighting so hard to keep this from happening, in part because they're not especially optimistic about what the outcome will be. But I look forward to getting a closer look at what this decision actually says and why they decided to finally extradite.
Well, maybe if we're, because I was at the same protest, but here in LA last April as well for Julian Assange, and I agree it wasn't a large turnout. We marched our way over to CNN, trying to get some exposure for Julian Assange, hoping that they'd maybe cover it. They of course did not. So I mean, I hear you, but maybe this time you and I are here now, right? Doing this.
It's true.
So
it's true.
Maybe then there would be more exposure. At least we, here on Rising would be talking about it and trying to get exposure out there for him.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, it's a dismal situation for Julian Assange and for the free press.
Yeah, and for his family.
Yeah, terrible. All right, well, we will have more Rising after this. Thanks so much for watching.